Netflix and 50 Cent have pulled back the curtain on one of the most powerful and allegedly most dangerous men in entertainment, Sean "Diddy" Combs. The new docuseries, Sean Combs: The Reckoning, reveals a side of Diddy darker than anything fans imagined. Secret hotel room footage shows Diddy frantically strategizing with his team just days before his arrest. Former friends and employees come forward with shocking allegations of violence, extortion, entrapment, and abuse at the hands of the hip-hop mogul. They describe him as a master manipulator who dangled the carrot of fame and fortune to control everyone around him and destroyed everybody he touched. Most explosively, The Reckoning digs into Diddy's possible links to the murders of rap legends Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G. For decades, rumors swirled that Diddy had a role in these unsolved killings. Now, new witnesses and evidence, including a confession from Tupac's alleged killer naming Diddy as the one who ordered the hit, are bringing those rumors into sharper focus. As Bad Boy Records co-founder Kirk Burroughs puts it in the doc, "I think that Sean had a lot to do with the death of Tupac, and he ushered Biggie to his death." In other words, the two most notorious murders in hip-hop history may lead right back to Diddy. How did a poor kid from Harlem rise to the heights of music industry success, only to be accused of such heinous acts? Today on Dark Case Desk, we're digging deep into the secret history of Sean "Diddy" Combs. From his violent childhood and early hustles, to the East Coast-West Coast rap feud that claimed 2 lives, to the sex trafficking freak-offs he allegedly ran behind closed doors, we'll examine the evidence uncovered by journalists, law enforcement, and the new Netflix docuseries that implicates Diddy in murder plots, brutal assaults, and decades of corruption. Before we begin, please hit the like button and subscribe to Dark Case Desk for more in-depth true crime documentaries. Let us know in the comments. Do you believe the allegations against Diddy? And what do you make of the claims that he was involved in Tupac's and Biggie's murders? We want to hear your thoughts on this explosive case. Now, let's uncover the dark secrets of Sean "Diddy" Combs, secrets that his former friends say will change how you think of Diddy forever. Rise of a mogul and early red flags. To understand how Sean Combs became Diddy, we must start with his rough upbringing. Born in Harlem in 1969 to Janice Combs and Melvin Combs, Sean had a traumatic childhood. His father, an associate of a notorious drug lord, was murdered in Central Park when Sean was just 2 years old. His mother Janice raised him alone and, according to those who knew the family, ruled with an iron fist. In the docuseries, Sean's childhood friend, Tim "Dog" Patterson, recalls witnessing Janice physically abuse young Sean. "His beatings made me scared," Patterson says, describing how severe the punishments were. When he got his beatings, it wasn't a joking thing. These alleged beatings were far more brutal than a typical parental spanking. They left Sean traumatized. Janice Combs has since denied being abusive, stating she raised Sean with love and hard work, not abuse. She declined to comment for the Netflix series, which spoke volumes to viewers. Growing up in a tough environment may have hardened Sean, but it doesn't excuse what he later became. By his late teens and early 20s, the ambitious Sean Combs hustled his way into the music business. He started as an intern at Uptown Records, quickly impressing executives with his ear for hits and his relentless drive. In 1993, after a falling out at Uptown, the two-year-old entrepreneur launched his own label, Bad Boy Entertainment. But even at this early stage, there were red flags about his ethics and behavior. One early incident was the City College tragedy in December 1991, a celebrity charity basketball game organized by two-year-old Sean Combs and rapper KeffeD at City College of New York. Diddy aggressively promoted the event far beyond the venue's capacity. On the day, a massive crowd showed up, and in the chaos, 9 people were trampled to death in a stampede at the door. It was a horrific disaster. Incredibly, no one, including Combs, was ever criminally charged for the 9 deaths. But behind the scenes, Combs was already thinking about protecting himself from the fallout. According to Kirk Burroughs, when Combs formed Bad Boy Entertainment in 1993, he deliberately kept his own name off the company's ownership papers to shield himself from liability for the City College victims. Instead, he put 75% of Bad Boy's stock in his mother Janice's name and 25% in Burroughs' name. So, officially, Sean Combs didn't own the label at all. He did not put the company in his name to protect him from paying families at CCNY, Burroughs recounts. By structuring Bad Boy this way, Diddy could avoid civil judgments from the victims' families if they sued. Sure enough, the families did file wrongful death suits. Combs eventually contributed $750,000 to a $3.8 million settlement in 1998, a payout much smaller than it could have been if his personal assets were on the line. The City College disaster showed a cold, calculating side of Combs. Even as 9 young people lay dead due to an event he promoted, his priority was protecting his money and image. That same calculating mindset drove Diddy's meteoric rise. Throughout the mid-1990s, Bad Boy Entertainment pumped out chart-topping acts like Craig Mack, the Notorious B.I.G., Faith Evans, 112, and Ma Dollar E. By his mid-20s, Sean Puffy Combs had transformed into a flashy mogul, rocking designer suits, popping champagne in music videos, and throwing lavish parties. He had a charisma that attracted people to his orbit. But behind the shiny suits and million-watt smile, former insiders say, Diddy was developing a dark playbook for manipulating those around him. As Burroughs puts it, with Sean, sometimes you're humiliated, sometimes you're made an example of, sometimes violent things happen to you, He dangled fame and luxury in front of young artists to make them loyal, then exploited them financially and emotionally. Friends turned enemies. Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls. By 1995, Sean Puff Daddy Combs was on top of the East Coast hip-hop world, thanks largely to the success of Bad Boy's biggest star, Christopher Wallace, better known as the Notorious B.I.G., or simply Biggie Smalls. Biggie was more than just Diddy's marquee artist. He was a close friend. The two had a big brother, little brother dynamic. Meanwhile, on the West Coast, rapper Tupac Shakur was an ascendant superstar associated with L.A.-based Death Row Records, led by the fearsome Marion Suge Knight. What many forget today is that Tupac and Biggie started out as friends. In the early 1990s, before the beef, Tupac often traveled to New York and would hang out with Biggie. They performed together and shared a mutual respect. But as both men's fame grew, their friendship deteriorated into one of the most infamous feuds in music history, the East Coast versus West Coast rap war, and Sean Combs was right in the center of it on the East Coast side. The turning point came on the 30th of November 1994. That night, Tupac Shakur was scheduled to record a verse for a Bad Boy rapper at Quad Recording Studios in Manhattan, a session indirectly connected to Combs. As Tupac entered the lobby, armed men ambushed him in a robbery setup. Tupac was shot 5 times and robbed of jewelry. He miraculously survived, but he was convinced that the attack was no random stick-up. Tupac publicly accused Biggie and Diddy of having prior knowledge of, or even orchestrating the ambush, feeling betrayed that his New York friends had set him up. "I believe so. I have proof. But this is not for the world to know," Tupac said, when asked if Diddy was involved. There's no hard evidence that Combs actually ordered the 1994 shooting. Many now believe it was arranged by a Brooklyn street figure unrelated to Bad Boy. But Tupac's belief that Combs and Biggie had a hand in it lit the fuse of a bitter rivalry. Soon, the beef spilled into the public through diss tracks and award show confrontations. In August 1995, Suge Knight took a jab at Puff Daddy on stage at the Source Awards in New York, telling artists, "Come to Death Row if you don't want your executive producer dancing in your videos." A clear shot at Combs' habit of hogging the spotlight in his artists' songs. In turn, by 1996, Tupac was taunting Biggie and Bad Boy in songs like the scathing hit "M Up," where he insults Biggie and even claims to have slept with Biggie's wife. The atmosphere was toxic and deeply personal. Despite the hostility, Combs and Biggie continued making trips to Los Angeles, arguably enemy territory, to promote Bad Boy artists. Many in LA were outraged by Tupac's murder and blamed Bad Boy. After Tupac was killed in September 1996, Los Angeles became extremely dangerous for anyone affiliated with Bad Boy. Combs and Biggie received death threats, warning them not to set foot in California. Biggie himself was deeply unsettled by Tupac's violent end and the prospect that he could be next. As we'll explore, Biggie did not want to be in Los Angeles in early 1997. Tragically, neither Biggie nor Tupac would live to see the end of that decade. Tupac Shakur was gunned down in Las Vegas on the 7th of September 1996 and died 6 days later at age 25. 6 months later, on the 9th of March 1997, Christopher Biggie Wallace was shot to death in Los Angeles at just 24. 2 bright lights of hip-hop were extinguished in a half-year span. Both murders shocked the world and remain officially unsolved to this day, fueling endless speculation, theories, and accusations. And in the center of many of those theories stands Sean "Diddy" Combs. Did Diddy order Tupac's murder? For decades, the question of who killed Tupac has been a subject of fascination and investigation. Numerous books and documentaries have proposed answers. But one of the most startling claims, now repeated in the Netflix series, is that Sean Combs himself ordered a hit on Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight by offering a $1 million bounty to a Compton gang. It sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Yet this allegation comes from someone with first-hand knowledge of the crime, Dwayne KeffeD Davis, a former Los Angeles Crip gang member who admits he was in the car when Tupac was shot. KeffeD is actually the only person ever charged in connection with Tupac's murder. He was arrested in 2023 after speaking too freely about the crime in interviews. Back in 2008, KeffeD secretly confessed key details to the Los Angeles police, and those taped confessions were unearthed recently by prosecutors. According to KeffeD's account, as detailed in both court filings and The Reckoning, Sean "Puffy" Combs was the man behind Tupac's murder. KeffeD claimed that in mid-1996, as the East-West feud raged, Combs was enraged by Tupac's constant insults and felt threatened by Suge Knight's violent reputation. Combs allegedly told KeffeD and his Crip associates that he needed to get rid of Tupac and Suge Knight. In exchange, Combs offered the Crips $1 million to handle the problem. Initially, this was discussed at an Anaheim, California gathering in July 1995, where Combs blurted out in a room of Crips that he wanted "them dudes' heads," meaning Tupac and Suge, off his back. KeffeD says Combs was half joking in that moment, caught up in the tension. But later, over lunch in Los Angeles, Combs made the offer explicit. He would pay $1 million for the hit. KeffeD agreed, telling Combs, "Man, we'll wipe their asses out quick, *." He even quipped he'd have done it for far less, would have done it for $50,000 if he'd known Combs was serious. That might have remained just talk, except events soon provided an opportunity to strike. On the night of the 7th of September 1996, Tupac and Suge Knight were in Las Vegas, attending a Mike Tyson boxing match. Unbeknownst to them, KeffeD and his crew of Crips, including his nephew Orlando, Baby Lane Anderson, were also in Vegas that weekend, on a casual trip. After the fight, in the MGM Grand Casino, a chance encounter lit the fuse. One of Suge Knight's Blood Gang associates spotted Orlando Anderson and accused him of trying to snatch a death row chain months earlier. Tupac, impulsive as ever, ran over and punched Orlando Anderson in the face, triggering a brawl where Tupac's crew beat Anderson on the casino floor. Security broke it up, but the damage was done. In gang culture, such a public beatdown demanded swift retaliation. KeffeD and his Crip crew were now out for payback against Tupac and Suge that very night, and they remembered Sean Combs' $1 million bounty. They hadn't come armed to Vegas, but Keff's friend Zip Martin, a Harlem drug dealer with connections to Combs, supplied a gun, a Glock pistol hidden in his car. Around 11 p.m., as Tupac rode in Suge Knight's BMW on Flamingo Road, a white Cadillac pulled up alongside. Inside were KeffeD, his nephew Orlando Anderson in the back seat, and two other Crip associates. Orlando Anderson leaned across and opened fire out the car window, striking Tupac multiple times. Tupac Shakur was mortally wounded. He died in the hospital on September 13, and Suge Knight was grazed in the head by fragments. In KeffeD's telling, the hit was carried out for Combs, but payment was never made. After the murder, Combs allegedly called his friend Zip to ask, "Was that us?" essentially confirming Tupac's shooting was their doing. KeffeD, through Zip, conveyed that yes, it was their crew, and Combs still owed the promised money. Diddy reportedly replied that he wanted the hit confirmed, and he'd take care of it. But according to KeffeD, the $1 million never materialized. Combs has vehemently denied these claims, calling them nonsense. Las Vegas police, for their part, stated in 2024 that Sean Combs has never been considered a suspect in Tupac's case officially. Nevertheless, the allegations persist. This stunning confession from KeffeD first became public through a 2011 LAPD task force probe led by Detective Greg Kading, and later via Keff's memoir and interviews. At the time, because of legal immunity arrangements, KeffD's statements could not be used to prosecute Combs. But they added serious credence to a theory, long whispered in hip-hop circles, that Diddy put a hit on Tupac Shakur, Now that KeffeD is facing trial for Tupac's murder, his trial is set for early 2026. His old claims about Diddy have taken on new life. In The Reckoning, former LAPD detective Greg KeffeD flatly states that if you solve Biggie's murder, it inevitably leads back to Tupac's murder. And that, KeffeD suggests, could point to Combs. KeffeD alleges that Diddy was stonewalling investigators, discouraging witnesses from talking about Biggie's case. Precisely because digging into Biggie would unearth the chain of events connecting to Tupac. In other words, Diddy did not want the full truth of the Tupac-Biggie saga to come out. So far, Sean Combs has not been charged with anything related to Tupac's death, but the fact that a federal docuseries shows taped evidence of KeffeD saying Combs paid him to kill Tupac is extraordinary. It's the kind of bombshell that, if believed, recasts Diddy not just as a music mogul, but as someone willing to commission murder to settle scores. Biggie's murder. Did Diddy put Biggie in the crosshairs? 6 months after Tupac's death, tragedy struck again. The notorious B.I.G. was gunned down in Los Angeles on the 9th of March 1997. Biggie had traveled to L.A. against his better judgment, and many now believe Sean Combs played a direct role in placing Biggie in harm's way. By early 1997, tensions were sky-high. Tupac's murder was widely seen as part of the East-West feud. Many in Los Angeles blamed Bad Boy Records and Biggie for inciting or celebrating Tupac's demise, even though Biggie denied that. Diddy and Biggie were receiving death threats and warnings to stay out of California. Biggie himself was deeply anxious. According to people close to him, Biggie did not want to go to LA at that time. In fact, Biggie had a trip to London planned for March 1997 as an international promotional tour for his upcoming album, Life After Death. That would have been a safe move. Lay low in Europe until tempers on the West Coast cooled. But Sean Combs had other plans. Kirk Burroughs alleges that Diddy pressured Biggie to cancel the London trip and remain in Los Angeles to promote the album and attend industry events. Combs was, in Burroughs' words, determined to do a party on enemy turf, despite the obvious risks. Biggie didn't want to go, but Sean talked him into doing all those things, Burroughs says in the documentary. Against his own instincts, Biggie trusted Diddy's judgment and stayed in L.A. On the 7th of March 1997, Biggie and Diddy made a public appearance at the Soul Train Music Awards in Los Angeles. It did not go well. The two New Yorkers were reportedly booed by some in the crowd of West Coast fans. Sensing the hostility, they kept their heads down. The plan was to wrap up business and get out of town quickly. According to Burroughs, the Soul Train Awards were supposed to be Biggie's only public event before heading to London the next day. But Combs allegedly canceled Biggie's flight, extending their L.A. trip for parties, a fateful decision. On the night of the 9th of March 1997, Combs and Biggie attended a lavish after-party thrown by Vibe magazine at the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles. The venue was packed with music industry VIPs. Diddy was in his element, partying on the West Coast as if he had no worries. But shortly after midnight, Biggie decided to leave the party early, perhaps feeling uneasy. He climbed into the passenger seat of a GMC Suburban SUV. His entourage, including Diddy in a separate vehicle, prepared to caravan back to the hotel. As Biggie's vehicle waited at a red light a block from the museum, a black Chevrolet Impala pulled up alongside. The driver was an unknown black male wearing a blue suit and bow tie, looking like a member of the Nation of Islam or an affiliated group. Without warning, the Impala's driver opened fire, pumping multiple 9mm bullets into the SUV. Biggie was hit 4 times in the chest. His friends rushed him to the hospital, but at approximately 1:15 a.m., Christopher Wallace was pronounced dead from the gunshot wounds. The killer sped off and was never definitively identified or caught. Biggie's murder case stalled amid interagency squabbles and corruption scandals. The leading theory, long advanced by retired LAPD detective Russell Poole, was that Suge Knight ordered the hit on Biggie in retaliation for Tupac, possibly using rogue LAPD officers tied to Death Row Records to help orchestrate it. Another theory posited that Southside Crips might have done it because Bad Boy Combs owed them money, presumably for unpaid security services, or as revenge for not paying the promised bounty on Tupac. Indeed, informants had claimed Combs hired Crips for protection and then stiffed them on payments, causing bad blood. Yet another rumor was that Combs somehow wanted Biggie dead. An extreme claim, but some have speculated Diddy stood to profit from Biggie's death via insurance or to consolidate his own fame. There's no solid evidence that Diddy actively wished harm on Biggie. By all accounts, Biggie was his friend and golden goose. However, what is clear is that Diddy ignored the risk to Biggie's life and put him in the line of fire in LA, all for the sake of making appearances. Burroughs and others outright accuse Combs of effectively ushering Biggie to his death. If Biggie had left Los Angeles when he wanted to, he likely wouldn't have been at that intersection when the gunman struck. Burroughs bitterly notes that all of it happened just because Sean wanted to do a party on enemy turf. To make matters worse, in the aftermath of Biggie's killing, Combs's behavior raised eyebrows. According to retired detective Greg KeffeD, Combs did not fully cooperate with the LAPD investigation. He seemed more concerned with Bad Boy's reputation and his own legal exposure than with finding Biggie's killer. KeffeD claims Combs didn't do all that he could have done to help. In fact, he was a hindrance to the investigation. Combs allegedly discouraged members of his entourage from talking openly to police. Why? KeffeD suggests it's because solving Biggie's murder would inevitably open up the can of worms of Tupac's murder, potentially leading back to Combs's involvement in that. In other words, Diddy may have feared that honest cooperation about Biggie's case would expose his role in the Tupac conspiracy, so he stayed mum and urged others to do likewise. Officially, the Los Angeles Police Department has never named Combs as a suspect in Biggie's killing. Most evidence, including a confession by one of Suge Knight's associates years later, points to a Blood Gang member named Wardell Poochie Faust as Biggie's likely shooter, paid by Suge Knight. Poochie was himself killed in 2003, and the case is now considered cold. But the Netflix docuseries leaves viewers with a pointed question: would Biggie still be alive if not for Diddy's decisions? The implication is that Combs put his own superstar in the crosshairs, prioritizing business and ego over his friend's safety. To Burroughs and others who were there, Diddy's guilt in Biggie's death is not legal or direct, it's a moral guilt, a consequence of staggering recklessness and selfishness, betrayal and exploitation of Biggie's legacy. If the circumstances of Biggie's death made you uneasy about Diddy, what came after might truly turn your stomach. The documentary reveals that Diddy's treatment of Biggie's legacy, in the immediate aftermath of his murder, was shockingly mercenary. For starters, Combs sprang into action to memorialize his fallen friend with the biggest send-off imaginable. He famously organized a grand funeral for Biggie in Brooklyn, complete with a horse-drawn carriage for Biggie's casket and thousands of grieving fans lining the streets. It was, to be fair, a moving tribute. But according to Kirk Burroughs, Diddy had ulterior motives, even in mourning. Burroughs alleges that while Diddy publicly played the role of devastated best friend, he quietly charged the entire massive funeral to Biggie's own estate. Yes, you read that right. Diddy did not pay for Biggie's funeral himself. Instead, he made Biggie's mother and children bear the cost by billing it as an expense of Biggie's estate. Burroughs details how Combs initially said, "We're going to do the biggest funeral New York has ever seen, sparing no expense." But when the price tag became clear, Diddy decided, Biggie's gonna have to pay for this funeral, In the docuseries, Burroughs recounts Diddy's words, "We'll do a big show, but Big's estate will recoup it. Biggie will pay for it." Essentially, Diddy wanted the glory of hosting a legendary memorial, one that would burnish his own image as the heartbroken friend. But he wasn't willing to foot the bill. He passed it to Biggie's grieving family. As Burroughs puts it, Sean doing a big show looks good on him, but he's not going to tell the world that Biggie was going to pay for it. This allegation caused outrage as clips of the docuseries spread. Some close to the Bad Boy camp have denied it, but multiple sources in The Reckoning back up Burroughs' account. In fact, Burroughs further claims that Combs tried to alter Biggie's recording contract after his death, attempting to replace pages in the recently renegotiated Bad Boy contract to make terms more favorable to the label now that Biggie was not around to object. Burroughs says he refused to go along with such unethical revisions. For resisting, he claims, Diddy fired him 90 days later. Think about that. Within 3 months of Biggie's murder, Diddy had allegedly discarded his late friend's closest ally, Burroughs, for not helping him squeeze more profit from Biggie's catalog. It paints a picture of Combs as someone for whom loyalty only flowed one way. In life, Biggie made Bad Boy into a powerhouse and made Combs a multimillionaire. In death, Biggie was apparently worth even more to Combs, as a martyr whose tribute song, "I'll Be Missing You," which Combs released with Biggie's widow, Faith Evans, became a worldwide hash-shown hit and won Combs a Grammy, and as a memory to be monetized. These revelations underscore a pattern with Diddy. No matter how close you are to him, he will use you if it benefits him. When Biggie was alive, Diddy shared the spotlight, but always made sure to promote himself, even crediting himself as an artist on Biggie's songs. When Biggie died, Diddy literally turned the funeral into a recoupable promotional event at his artist's expense. It's telling that, as the docuseries claims, Diddy's image as Biggie's distraught best friend was largely posturing. The friendship, Burroughs suggests, was one-sided. Biggie genuinely loved Puff. But Puff's loyalty in return was feigned for the cameras. Behind closed doors, he was already focused on how to maintain his empire without Biggie, and how to ensure Big's death didn't cost him financially. The freak-offs: sex, drugs, and videotape. Even as the murders of Tupac and Biggie cast a shadow over Combs's legacy, a different kind of darkness was unfolding in his private life. By the late 1992s and 2000s, Combs, who by then had adopted the nickname Diddy, was extremely wealthy, widely connected, and viewed as an indomitable force in entertainment. He dated superstar Jennifer Lopez, ran the successful Sean John clothing line, and continued churning out hits as a producer and performer. But according to numerous people in his inner circle, Diddy also led a secret life of debauchery and abuse, hidden behind the veneer of celebrity glamour. Central to these allegations are what Diddy himself called freak-offs. What exactly is a freak-off? In the words of federal prosecutors, they were elaborate, drug-fueled sexual performances, orchestrated by Combs, often spanning days at a time. Diddy would allegedly invite or coerce women, and sometimes male sex workers, to participate in marathon orgies, often in hotel suites or his mansion, with multiple people involved, heavy drug use, and even elements of sadomasochism. These weren't consensual swinger parties, say witnesses. They were carefully curated sessions where Diddy exerted control over everyone's behavior and doled out narcotics to keep the party going. One former escort, Clayton Howard, revealed in The Reckoning that Diddy held a freak-off every year on March 9, the anniversary of Biggie's death. It's a chilling detail. While fans mourned Biggie on that date, Diddy apparently spent it in a haze of drugs and sex. "I don't know if that was his release for that day or whatever," Howard says, "but they always called me on March 9. According to Howard and others, these events would last 3 to 4 days straight, with participants barely sleeping, kept going by cocktails of MDMA, ecstasy, cocaine, alcohol, and other drugs. One infamous detail: Combs allegedly kept bottles of baby oil mixed with a dissociative drug thought to be GHB or a similar substance, which he would pour liberally on participants' bodies during the orgies, the drug absorbing through the skin to heighten disorientation and compliance. It sounds like something out of a crime novel, but multiple witnesses have corroborated aspects of this. Drugs were used as tools of control in Diddy's arsenal. Disturbingly, Combs reportedly filmed many of these freak-offs. According to the federal indictment against him in 2024, Diddy often electronically recorded these encounters. Why record such incriminating footage? Possibly for his own gratification, but also as blackmail material. The indictment states that Combs used his power, which included supplying drugs, financial support, and career opportunities, to coerce victims into sexual acts, and then threatened to expose the recordings if they didn't comply with his demands in the future. In short, the freak-off tapes gave Diddy leverage to ensure silence and obedience. If a young female artist or employee was lured or forced into an orgy on camera, she would be far less likely to ever speak out, under fear that Diddy could ruin her by releasing the footage. It's a tactic chillingly reminiscent of how Jeffrey Epstein recorded his high-profile guests to secure power over them. As some have noted, Combs appears to have perfected the art of sexual entrapment. The physical and psychological abuse described is staggering. Women in Diddy's circle say he would beat them if they showed hesitation or tried to leave. Combs's longtime on-and-off girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura, later alleged in a lawsuit that Diddy forced her to attend and participate in freak-offs with male prostitutes, and violently assaulted her on multiple occasions, including once punching and stomping on her until she blacked out, and another time chasing her through her home with a firearm. Cassie filed a civil suit in 2023 detailing these claims in harrowing detail. Diddy settled the suit within 1 day, paying her an undisclosed sum. Former Bad Boy staff member Rodney Lil Rod Jones recounted that even Diddy's eldest son, Justin, then a young adult, was sometimes present at the freak-offs, partying alongside his father. It would be Puff and Justin in the room, with multiple women, closed doors, lots of music and lots of drugs, Jones claims. Justin Combs has not commented on this allegation, and we must note it is unconfirmed. Nonetheless, the fact it's been raised by an eyewitness is disturbing. By leveraging drugs, money, and intimidation, Diddy allegedly maintained a harem-like environment where he was the ultimate authority. One particularly grotesque story in the docuseries comes from singer Aubrey O'Day, formerly of the bad boy girl group Danity Kane. O'Day tearfully shares that she obtained an affidavit from another woman claiming she witnessed Diddy and another man sexually assaulting Aubrey one night at the studio while Aubrey was incapacitated. Aubrey herself had only patchy memories of the incident, and reading the affidavit led her to wonder, does this mean I was raped? I don't even know, and I don't want to know. It's a heartbreaking example of how Diddy's alleged victims often repressed or rationalized the abuse to survive in his orbit. The pattern that emerges is one of systematic predation. Combs would identify those he could control, whether aspiring artists, models, or employees, and entrap them through a mix of seduction, financial dependence, and fear. A number of former bad boy artists have spoken about how nobody ever gets paid under Diddy. He'd promise big money and lavish perks, but keep them indebted and under his thumb. For instance, he famously charged artists for expenses, like music videos and dinners, often leaving them in debt to the label. This financial exploitation extended even to his biggest stars, as we saw with Biggie's funeral expenses. In 2023, the dam finally broke. Besides Cassie's lawsuit, several other women filed civil suits in New York under a temporary law extending the statute of limitations for sex crimes, accusing Combs of rape and sexual abuse in incidents from the 1,990 seconds. The sheer number of allegations, echoing similar patterns of drugging, beating, and terrorizing women, cast a dark pall over Combs's legacy. But it was only the prelude to the real legal reckoning. The fall of an icon. Federal indictment and arrest. Behind the scenes, law enforcement had been listening. Following the wave of civil suits and public allegations in late 2023, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York quietly launched an investigation. What they uncovered led to a dramatic turn of events. Sean Combs was arrested on federal charges in mid-September 2024, marking the stunning downfall of a music icon. On the 16th of September 2024, Homeland Security Investigations agents swooped in on Diddy at a Manhattan hotel and took him into custody. The next day, an indictment was unsealed, charging Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, and transporting individuals across state lines for prostitution. Essentially, the feds accused Diddy of running his business empire as a criminal enterprise dedicated to exploiting women and committing violent crimes to protect his secrets. The indictment outlined a truly damning catalog of allegations. From at least 2008 to 2023, Combs led an enterprise that abused, threatened, and coerced women for sex, while also engaging in kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice to cover up his misdeeds. He organized the aforementioned freak-offs, described in legal terms as frequent, days-long sexual activity with male commercial sex workers that he arranged, directed, and recorded. To ensure women participated, Combs used violence and intimidation, controlled their access to drugs and money, and explicitly threatened to expose sensitive recordings if they disobeyed. He repeatedly beat and assaulted women, and even men who witnessed his abuse, punching, slapping, kicking, and throwing objects, causing injuries that took weeks to heal. He allegedly committed or ordered acts of retaliation like arson. One claim is that he once blew up a rival's car, an incident eerily similar to Cassie's allegation that he had her purchase gasoline to firebomb rapper Kid Cudi's car, something that indeed happened in 2012. He also allegedly arranged beatings of industry rivals and paid off people to buy their silence. The charges painted Combs as nothing less than a crime boss in designer clothing. U.S. Attorney Damian Williams stated, "For years, Sean Combs used the business empire he controlled to sexually abuse and exploit women, as well as to commit other acts of violence and obstruction of justice. He urged more victims to come forward, signaling that the case was far from over." Diddy's arrest sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. Here was a man long considered untouchable, a billionaire mogul who partied with presidents and dated Hollywood stars, now sitting in jail attire, facing the possibility of life in prison. He denied everything, of course. His legal team went on the offensive, claiming he was being targeted in a one-sided narrative led by enemies, clearly referring to 50 Cent's involvement in the documentary. They sought to suppress evidence, fought the charges tooth and nail, and maintained Combs's innocence. For a while, Combs was held without bail as a flight risk in a Brooklyn federal detention center. In the midst of this, Netflix and 50 Cent released Sean Combs' The Reckoning in early December 2025, while Combs was in custody awaiting trial. You might wonder, do they have Netflix in prison? By all accounts, word of the docuseries reached Combs behind bars one way or another. The series, drawing on hours of interview footage and that explosive never-before-seen September 2024 video diary of Diddy, was the final nail in the coffin of his public image. Millions tuned in, horrified and transfixed. As one commentator put it, "I couldn't wait for it to end. It made me sick." Seeing the scope of Diddy's alleged depravity laid out, many fans felt they'd been duped by his shiny persona all these years. Meanwhile, Sean Combs had his day in court. In the summer of 2025, he finally went to trial on the federal charges. The outcome was something of a mixed bag. In July 2025, a jury acquitted Combs of the two most serious charges, racketeering and sex trafficking. This was a blow to prosecutors, perhaps reflecting jurors' skepticism of some witness testimony. For instance, some jurors reportedly had trouble fully believing Cassie's account due to her continued relationship with Combs for years. However, Combs was convicted on a lesser count of transporting an individual for prostitution, essentially a Mann Act violation. In October 2025, a judge sentenced him to 50 months in federal prison, just over 4 years. Because Combs had already spent about a year locked up pre-trial, he received credit for time served, making his projected release date sometime in 2028. By one account, he could be out by mid-2028 if all goes well, an incredibly light punishment considering the original indictment's scope. It's worth noting that some have criticized this outcome, feeling that Combs's wealth and power helped him avoid the full consequences. On the flip side, Combs's lawyers insist he was singled out due to his celebrity and that he never forced anyone into anything. They maintain that vindication is only partial until he's cleared of all accusations. As of now, late 2025, Sean Diddy Combs remains an inmate in federal custody. Inmate number not publicly disclosed. In a strange epilogue, reports emerged that he even got in minor trouble behind bars for trying to start a home brewing operation, making illicit alcohol in prison, a little comic footnote that supposedly earned him an extra month on his sentence, according to pundits joking about it. From champagne bottles in VIP clubs to fermenting juice in a prison toilet, how far the mighty have fallen. Conclusion: it's a Shakespearean tragedy. The man who coined "can't stop, won't stop" has finally been stopped. Sean Combs rose from a childhood of hardship to become a self-made multimillionaire, rubbing shoulders with royals of music, film, and politics. But behind the chart-topping hits and flashy music videos lay a trail of victims. From the families of 9 people killed at his event in 1991, to the artists whose careers and lives he controlled, to the women who say he violated and terrorized them, the human cost of Diddy's empire is staggering. The Netflix documentary The Reckoning and the evidence we've discussed reveal a portrait of a man who believed he was above all consequences. For years, it seemed he was. Murders went unsolved, lawsuits were settled quietly, rumors were dismissed as hater talk. Diddy cultivated an image as the life of the party, the shiny-suited mogul with the Midas touch, while allegedly behaving like a mafia don in private. As one former associate said, "Everything you're taught growing up about being a good person, he did the opposite." The allegations that Diddy masterminded Tupac's murder and paved the way for Biggie's murder are perhaps the most shocking of all. If true, they mean he had 2 of his peers, his friend and his rival, assassinated to serve his ambitions or grudges. That would mark him as one of the most cold-blooded figures in entertainment history. Officially, those murders remain unsolved, but the new witnesses and sworn statements have certainly tilted the court of public opinion. Kirk Burroughs' blunt assessment that Diddy had a lot to do with Tupac's death and ushered Biggie to his death now resonates more loudly than ever. It's important to state that Sean Combs maintains his innocence on all counts. Through lawyers, he's called the docuseries a smear campaign and insisted he never forced anyone and never had anything to do with his friend's murders. He points to the jury acquittals on major charges as proof the most serious claims didn't hold up. Everyone is entitled to defend their name, even the formerly untouchable Brother Love, one of Diddy's many nicknames, now fighting to restore his reputation. Perhaps new information will emerge, Perhaps Combs will write a tell-all from prison, offering his side of the story. But given the weight of evidence and testimony, it's hard to imagine public perception ever swinging back in his favor. In the end, the story of Diddy is a cautionary tale of power unchecked. He had power over careers, power over media narratives, and power over vulnerable individuals who trusted him. He used that power, according to these accounts, to enrich himself and indulge his darkest impulses, believing he'd never face repercussions. For a long time, he didn't. But as one investigator said of the recent developments, it feels like karmic justice. At last, accountability is catching up. Perhaps the final words should go to those who survived Diddy's reign of terror and bravely spoke out. They faced intimidation and risked their safety to tell the truth. People like Kirk Burroughs, Tim Patterson, Aubrey O'Day, Clayton Howard, Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard who has corroborated many claims, and of course Cassie Ventura. They each added pieces to a puzzle that, once assembled, reveals the monstrous image of a man consumed by greed, lust, and violence. If not for their courage, the curtain might never have been pulled back. Sean Combs wanted to be seen as the ultimate winner, but now his legacy may forever be that of a predator who left a wake of destruction. It's a dark, dark case, but an important one. As viewers and as a society, we must reckon with how someone like Diddy operated in plain sight for so long, and we owe it to the victims, from Tupac and Biggie to the unnamed survivors still out there, to ensure their stories are heard and believed. What do you think about these revelations? Has your view of Diddy changed after learning all this? Do you believe he was involved in the murders of Tupac and Biggie? Let us know in the comments below. This has been a deep dive by Dark Case Desk. If you appreciated the thoroughness of this investigation, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more comprehensive true crime breakdowns. We'll continue following any new developments in the Sean Combs saga and other cases of crime and scandal in the entertainment world. Remember, the truth might be ugly. It might be hidden for years, but it has a way of coming to light. As The Reckoning showed, no amount of money or fame can keep the truth buried forever. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next Dark Case Desk investigation.